أعظم الله أجورنا بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام، وجعلنا وإياكم من الطالبين بثاره مع وليه الإمام المهدي من آل محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. أفلح من يصلي على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من اللعين الشيطان اللغوي الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين، ولعنة الله دائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، أعظم الله أجورنا بمصابنا بالحسين، وجعلنا إياكم من طالبين بثأره مع الإمام المهدي من آل محمد. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات. I think to myself that if the Imam of the time was with us right now, what would he be doing? What would he be feeling? What would he be experiencing? On the 21st of Ramadan, Amir al-Mu'mineen turned to Sayyidah Zainab and he reminded her of what will happen to her on the 10th of Muharram. أيها الأعزاء والإخوان، هذا يوم الحسين. Today is the day of Hussein ibn Ali salamullahi alayhi, and thus you see that I am Masloob al-Amama because he was Masloob al-Amama. I am not wearing my Amama today because هذا يوم الحسين. And on the day of Imam al-Hussein, it is our custom that we do not wear the Amama because this is the day where he did not have an Amama, where his turban was taken from his head. We are here at this moment, at this sa'a. We turn to Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. We say, Yabna Rasulillah, Aina tajlis? Fi ay zawiya tajlis? Where are you sitting now, Ya Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman? Ya Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, Yabna Rasulillah, we are wearing clothes today. ولكن جدك الحسين جدك الحسين سلام الله عليه, he did not have the luxury of wearing clothes on this day. We are sitting here while your grandmother, your aunt Zainab salamullahi alayha, was sitting in the turab. هذا يوم الحسين، يوم المصيبة، يوم الحزن. سيدي يا أبا صالح، يا صاحب الزمان, we're all weak, we're all sinners. We're shy to read the musibah in front of you. But I'll narrate to you one incident of Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum when he was Bain al-Haramain on the day of Ashura. The great Marja' Taqleed, Sayyid Bahr al-Ulum, all of a sudden started running back and forth, hitting his head like everyone else. They turned to him and they said, you are a Marja'. Why are you hitting yourself like this, Bain al-Haramain? He said, how could I not when I saw Al-Hujjat ibn Hassan running Bain al-Haramain? The battle was waged in waves, which began with the Ansar. These Ansar were juniors like Wahab and Hur. The seniors were those like Habib ibn Madahir and Zuhair ibn Qayn. Of course, people like Habib ibn Madahir would go on later as they were in charge of the left flank on the day of Ashura. I will now read some different parts of the Maqtal of the day of Ashura. Saif bin Harith bin Sari and Malik bin Abd al-Sari, they were two brothers from Bani Jabir, from Hamadan. On the day of Ashura, they both came to Imam al-Hussein yabkiyan. They were crying. They came to Imam al-Hussein crying. And the Imam asked them, why are you two crying? Look at what they say. They said that we're not crying on ourselves. وَلَكِنْ نَبْكِي عَلَيْكَ يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. That we're crying over you, Ya Aba Abdullah. We're crying for you. These were some of the forgotten shabab and the youngsters of Karbala. That you are surrounded and we're not able to prevent anything or to help you, Ya Aba Abdullah. These two young boys now hug Imam al-Hussein. They said, Salamu alayka yabna Rasulillah. He said, Wa alaykum as-salam. And he sent salam on them both. They went out to fight and they were both killed. Then came the children of Aqil, of Bani Abi Talib, Imam Ali's nephews, Imam Hussein's cousins, and even his own nephews. So many of them died on the day of Ashura. How many of us know about the death of Aun and Muhammad, the sons of Abdullah bin Ja'far and Sayyidah Zainab, salamullahi alayha? Their martyrdom on the day of Ashura. Muhammad bin Abi Sa'id bin Aqil, Abdul Rahman bin Aqil, Abdullah bin Akbar bin Muslim bin Aqil, Kathir minhum. So many from the family of Muslim ibn Aqil, so many from the family of Amir al-Mu'mineen, so many from the family of Imam al-Hassan salamullahi alayh. These shuhada all perished in one jumla, in one group known as Ala Abi Talib. Right? They would go out into waves, one after the other, fighting on the day of Ashura. And when it came to Banu Hashim and the family of Imam al-Hussein, of course the first to go was Ali al-Akbar, as we read. And Imam al-Hussein then recited a special dua where he says, Oh Allah, deprive them of any blessings in the earth. Do not ever let their rulers be content with them, for they called upon us as if they would help us, but instead they turned against us to fight us. This was the dua of Imam al-Hussein on the day of Ashura, the feeling of betrayal that Imam al-Hussein had. That whenever Imam would have any feeling of sadness, he would look at the wajh and the face of Ali al-Akbar, and whatever sadness he had would go away. And in fact, the army of Umar ibn Sa'ad protested. Some of them even protested to Umar ibn Sa'ad and said, how can we fight someone that looks so much like the Messenger of Allah? Right? That he was the closest to the Messenger of Allah in both his khuluq and his khalq, in his creation and in his behavior. And the women would not let Ali Akbar go. Sakina, according to some traditions, held the amama of Ali Akbar, held his turban, and she began to cry until Imam al-Hussein had to take his hand and take him towards the battlefield. Ali al-Akbar continues to fight. Allahu Akbar. Min al-yamin al-shimal. From the right to the left, he is fighting on the right flank and the left flank. He killed 120 men. By now the thirst was killing him, right? He was so thirsty on that day. He rides back to his father, looking at him as a child does to the father. And he says, Ya Abba, al-atash qad qatalani, wa thiql al-hadid qad ajhadani. That, oh my father, the thirst is killing me, and the weight of this iron is overcoming me. Is there any way that I can get water now? Is there any way that I can arrive at water? Fabaka al-Hussein. Hussein begins to cry. He says, oh my son, give me your tongue. Ali Akbar puts his tongue out. Imam then says, Khud had al-khatam fi fik. Take this ring and put it into your mouth. Had al-khatam fi fik. Warja' ila qital aduwik. And now return to fighting your enemies. Ali al-Akbar returns to fight his enemies. He charges out like a lion. His father is trying his best to keep watch over him. The young Ali al-Akbar is then killed in the most brutal of ways, right? قَطَعُوهُ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا. قَطَعُوهُ بِأَسْيَافِهِمْ إِرْبًا إِرْبًا, right? That they cut him In the most horrible of ways, Ali al-Akbar is killed. Imam al-Hussein rushes out towards his son. It was too late. His horse had taken him off to the enemies. Abu Abdullah could only hear the screams of his son, Ya Abata, Ya Abata. And of course, Imam al-Hussein comes to his son and he says the famous words, Ad-dunya ba'daka al-afa, that there is no worth in this world after you. At this point, Layla comes out of the tent, the mother of Ali al-Akbar. She comes screaming, Wa walada, wa walada, wa walada. His mother is now screaming. She was screaming. The Rawi tells us, Sakina finds her father with Ali al-Akbar, Sayyidah Sukaina. She asks, where is my brother Ali? Imam al-Hussein turns to her and he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raj'un. Ali al-Akbar was the first among the Banu Hashim to go to fight. Then of course there was Al-Abbas. Abbas noticed the enemies getting closer. He began to send out one of his brothers one by one to fight. Today we will mention a little bit about the brothers of Abbas ibn Ali salamullahi alayhim. First of them was Abdullah bin Ali. He was 25 years old. Abbas told him to go out to fight until I see you martyred. Hatta araka qatla. He says, you don't have children, so you will be the first one to go. He goes out to fight and he begins reciting very beautiful poetry. He managed to kill 170 enemies, but Hani bin Thabit al-Hadrami hit him over the head and killed him. Then came Uthman bin Ali. He was 21 years old, the middle son of Ali and al-Banin. Abbas now sent out his second brother to the battlefield. He said, go my brother, taqaddam ya akhi, go forward to fight. He fought until Khuli fired an arrow into his side, causing him to fall from his horse. Khuli then beheaded Uthman bin Ali. Then came Ja'far bin Ali, Imam Hussein's brother, who was killed by Hani bin Thubayt al-Hadrami. Ja'far was the son of al-Banin. He went out to fight. He said, I am Ja'far, the son of the Most High. Inni ana Ja'far dhul ma'ali, ibn Ali al-Khair dhul nawali, dhalik al-wasi dhul nisa wal-wali. And he goes on to recite more poetry saying that he is the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen and so on and so forth. Then Khuli fired an arrow. But brothers, do you know where the arrow landed? Where did the arrow land? It landed in the eye of Ja'far. The arrow landed into the eye of Ja'far ibn Ali, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. Or some say the arrow landed in a part of his head. There's different traditions in this regard. Then comes the son of Imam al-Hassan. There were many sons. There were 6 or 7 shuhada from the sons of Imam al-Hassan, Abna al-Imam al-Hassan. Send your salams to Al-Hassan al-Mujtaba. There was Abdullah bin Hassan, Ahmad ibn Hassan. In fact, Ahmad was close to Qasim, about 13 or 14 years old. He went out to fight after begging his uncle. He said, remember, I am the nephew of Imam, son of Ali, of Imam al-Hassan, the son of Ali. The riwayah states he suffered incredibly from thirst, min shiddat al-atash. He began calling upon his uncle, Ya Amma, Ya Amma, Ya Amma. وَقَتَلَ جَمَاعَةَ كَثِيرًا قَتَلُوهُ. And he killed many people until he was killed himself. And some traditions state that his mother and his sister watched as multiple people killed him. This was the other son of Imam al-Hassan. Now we come to Qasim ibn Hassan alayhi salam. The young boy turns to his uncle, the uncle that swore to protect him. The very uncle that swore to care for Qasim as his own son after the death of Imam al-Hassan. How must have Imam al-Hassan felt? When his son al-Qasim turns to his uncle Hussein and he says, لا يقتل عمي وأنا أحمل السيف, then my uncle will not be killed as long as I am carrying a sword. He saw now that his uncle was alone. He kept asking for permission to fight. Khawarizmi reports that this boy had not even become baligh yet. Hussein looked at him and he began to cry. He embraces Qasim and they begin weeping and weeping and weeping and crying so much until they both faint. The boy had so much courage. My heart is terrified to tell you what happened. The boy charged out with a shirt on. He could not wear iron. His face was shining like the full moon. He was too young to ride a horse. He was running out in slippers. with one of the sandal strings broken. He bends down to fix his sandal. He could not bear the walking barefoot on the sand. Seeing this young boy occupied with his sandal, Umar bin Sa'id bin Nafid says, he then runs towards Qasim and he strikes him upon his head. Qasim begins to yell, Ya Amma, Ya Amma, Fajalla al-Hussein kamma yujalli as-saqar. That Hussein then comes out of his tent, charging out like an angry lion. The battle breaks out. Hussein cuts the arms of Sa'id off. All chaos breaks loose. Sa'id gets trampled to death by the horses. The dust now settles, and the Rawi says, the reporter says that I saw Hussein standing over the head of Qasim. The young boy's feet were stretched out onto the ground. Wa Husseina. Hussein is now all alone. The only hope for water is Abbas, salamullahi alayh. Abbas goes forward to fight. We are told on his return from the Furat, Abbas had his right hand cut. Then he had his left hand severed. Wa Abbas up. The liwa of Imam al-Hussein, the flag of Imam al-Hussein was about to fall to the ground. They fired an arrow into the water bag and it was all over. He had an arrow in his eye and he fell to the ground. فَانْقَلَبَ عَنْ فَرَسِهِ وَسَاهَ إِلَى أَخِيهِ الْحُسَيْنَ أَدْرِكْنِي. He began calling upon his brother Hussein to help him. أَدْرِكْنِي أَدْرِكْنِي يَا أَبَا عَبْدِ اللَّهِ. Imagine those screams and the cries of Abbas as he fell off of his horse. He was covered in blood, his eyes were covered in blood. You could only imagine. Abu Fadl Abbas began to cry out loud, Adrik akhak al-gharib. Help your brother, help your brother who is now alone. Alayka minni salam, ya Abu Abdullah. Upon you is peace, O Abu Abdullah. A man then comes out and he has a rod in his hand and he hits the head of Abbas, salamullahi alayh. Hussein heard the screams of his brother and he began screaming himself, Wa muhjata wa qalba, Wa muhjata, oh the blood of my heart. We're told Abu Abdullah at this point was saying, Wa kha wa Abbasa. Imagine the sadness of Hussein. Sayyidah Zainab then comes out because her Abbas has been hurt. Her Abbas is now gone. She begins to cry over her brother Abbas. Abu Abdullah then recites some words such as Ya Qamara Munira, oh my shining moon. Al-an inkasara dhahri wa qallat hilati. That now my back is broken. My back is broken and my patience has waned. The death of Abbas salamullahi alayh caused a major fall and destruction and setback in the army of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, because at this point he was sahibul liwa, he was holding the flag of Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. So at this point now the riwayat say that Hussein is alone. He looks left, kana yara yamina wa shimala wa lam yara ahada. Hussein looks right and he looks left, and now he sees nobody. Nobody is there now. This was the moment of great loneliness. Imam Zain al-Abidin comes out of his tent sick and limping. Kulthum asks him to return. The riwayah says, فَفَجَعَ الْحُسَيْنِ بِأَهْلِ بَيْتِهِ. Hussein is in a complete state of sadness and grief over his family. No one is left now but the women and the small children. Hussein begins to cry out, هَلْ مِنْ ذَابٍ يَذُبُّ عَنْ حُرَمِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, or هَلْ مِنْ نَاصِرًا. Is there any helper? هَلْ مِنْ نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرُنَا, هَلْ مِنْ مُغِيثٍ يُغِيثُنَا. Is there anyone to come to our aid? The time of desperation begins to sit in. He goes out to the people once again, to Banu Umayyah. He tells them, please listen to me. وَيْلَكُمْ مَا عَلَيْكُمْ أَن تَنْصِتُوا إِلَيْهِ. What is wrong with you that you do not listen to me? Imam is trying over and over for the enemies to listen to him. He says, shame on you. What is wrong with you that you will not even lend me an ear? For I am calling you to the path of right guidance and you are ignoring me. For he who obeys me will be rightly guided. So listen to me. He who turns against me, who disobeys me, will be among those that are destroyed. Imam then says something very important on the day of Ashura. He says, Muliyat butunakum min al-haram, that your stomachs have been filled with haram. وَتُوبِيَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَيْلُكُمْ أَلَا تَنْصِتُونَ أَلَا تَنْصِتُونَ أَلَا تَسْمَعُونَ. Cursed are you that you don't listen to me, that you don't hear with your ears. Your tummies have been filled with haram, and because of that now your hearts are sealed. Now we see Hussein pleading with them over and over in the final moments. The Imam's shaking words. He says again, shame upon you, shame upon you, shame upon you that you do not lend me your ear. In a last attempt, Abu Abdullah now takes his little baby, Ali al-Asghar, al-Radi, the nursing baby, Abdullah, out to the battlefront, hoping for some water. The little infant must have been gasping for air, you can only imagine. The little infant is laying on the hot sand in front of Abu Abdullah. Rubab now hands the baby to her husband Abu Abdullah. فَجْلَسُهُ فِي هِجْرِهِ وَأَخَذَ يُقَبِّلُهُ. Imam puts the baby in his lap. He starts to kiss the baby. He told his infant, curse upon these people for the day when Muhammad will be their opponent on the day of judgment. He took the thirsty baby to show him to the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. Maybe they will give him some water. He says, إِن لَمْ تَرْحَمُونِي فَارْحَمُوا هَذَا الطِّفْلَ فَارْحَمُوا هَذَا الطِّفْلَ. That if you have no mercy upon me, then have mercy on this baby. Can you imagine Imam Hussein begging for his baby, begging for the mercy from the enemies, for to have mercy on his baby? The child was about 3 months old. Hussein now sits on the ground with his infant. Harmala picks up an arrow. He puts the arrow in his bow. He pulls the bow back. فَرَمَاهُ رَجُلٌ. And it says that this Harmala, this man, a man fires an arrow. بِسَهْمٍ فَذُبِحَ. And the little boy was slaughtered. From ear to ear, the baby was slaughtered in the land of Karbala. The Imam pulled out the arrow from the infant's throat. The blood came all over Abu Abdullah. We read in the ziyarah of Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, Assalamu ala Abdullah ibn al-Husayn, al-Tifl al-Radi al-Murrammi al-Sari al-Mutashahit al-Dama. That peace be upon you, O Abdullah ibn Hussein, the nursing infant who was covered in his own blood, al-Mutashahit, Mutashahit Dama, the one that choked on his own blood on the day of Ashura because of the arrow that landed in his throat. Imam Baqir states, Salamullahi alayh, that Abu Abdullah threw the blood into the air and not a single drop landed. Imam now walks back and forth according to some tradition, saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridan bi qada'ihi wa tasliman li amri. That we come from Allah, to Him we return. And I am satisfied with your command, with your affair. He now digs a little grave for his baby. But the grave fills with blood because of all the blood coming from the jugular vein of the baby. By now Imam Hussein was wearing a black jubbah. He knew what was ahead of him. His trousers and his pants were old and worthless. Abu Abdullah now begins to bid farewell and wida to his family. Indeed, anyone may say that this was the most critical situation on the day of Ashura. The women began to grab the clothes of Imam al-Hussein. They began to scream. And they began to circle Imam al-Hussein. But now Hussein was wahidan. You know what the chapter of Arbab al-Maqtal said here? There's just one chapter only. Shall I narrate you the title? Al-Hussein Wahida. There's a whole bab fi Arbab al-Maqatil entitled Al-Hussein Wahidan. Now what we are about to recite is Al-Hussein Wahidan. Hussein is now alone. He comes out until he reaches the people, again seeking their ear. They refuse, but the battle must now begin. Imam is wearing the abba of Rasulullah. He puts his armor on top of it. He tells him, are you killing me because of what my father did to you at Badr? Abu Abdullah now begins the battle. He says, Inna da'i ibn da'i kad rakaza minna bayna ithnatain bayna al-milla wa dhilla. The Imam now says that this illegitimate child, meaning Umar ibn Sa'd, has forced us to choose between two choices, between the religion and humiliation. وَهَيْهَاتَ مِنَ الدَّنِينَ هَيْهَاتْ مِنَ الذِّلَّةِ هَيْهَاتْ مِنَ الذِّلَّةِ. The Imam begins to scream in the battlefield, scaring the enemies as he begins to say that humiliation will never be with us. You, the people of Kufa, ya Ahl al-Kufa, you are now here to kill me. You called me with words of kalamul bay'ah. You called me with the words of bay'ah, and now you are here to kill me. But we refuse to be humiliated. Imam al-Hussein was 54 years old, brothers and sisters. Umar ibn Sa'd himself says that Imam al-Hussein was left with no one, yet he was fighting like a lion. Umar ibn Sa'd says, Wallahi ajabna min sabr al-Hussein. We are surprised at the patience and the forbearance of Hussein. قتل أصحابه وأنصاره وأولاده. That his helpers have been killed, his children have been killed. Yet he is fighting like a lion. They were surprised, they were shocked that we just could not break his back, we could not break his hope. Hussein was unstoppable. The riwayah states that he let out a surah and a scream in the battlefield, that people would move 50 meters away from him from his single scream. Wa Abu Abdullah wa Husayna. He was roaring like a lion on the day of Ashura. Anyone that would come close to him would die. Imam as-Sadiq narrates that now 4,000 malaika, 4,000 angels requested to join the Imam's army and to help him. The Imam refuses. The Imam is now exhausted. Da'afa an al-qital, the riwayah states. Imam is getting tired now. وَرَجَعَ لِلْفُسْطَاطِ. And he returns to the tent for the very last time. Al-wida' al-akhir. This is now the final wida' of the Imam, the final farewell. Shall we narrate it now? He says, get ready for the affliction and be advised that Allah Almighty will protect and safeguard you. He shall save you from the evil of the enemies and make the ultimate end of your fair good. وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ الْخَيْرِ. The aqibah will be khair with you, he tells his family. Allah will torment your enemy with various types of bala and torture, and he will compensate you for this bala. The ladies were now completely in shambles without their Hussein. There was nothing. He now begins to pray. أَفْزَعُوا إِلَيْكَ خَائِفًا يَا اللَّهِ. Oh Allah, I turn to you خَائِفًا. cry to you, makroob, distress. Asta'inu bika da'ifa. This is a very authentic riwayah from Sheikh Al-Tusi in Misbah al-Mutahajjid. Imam is turning to Allah saying, I'm coming to you with buka and tears. Atawakkalu alayka kafiya. And I rely entirely upon you. Oh Allah, judge between us and them. Ahkim baynana wa baynahum. For they have misled us and they have betrayed us and they have killed us. We are the family of your Habib Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In another report, the Imam comes to Imam Zain al-Abidin's tent, where Zainab is tending to her nephew. Imam asks the father, what has happened with these munafiqs? Imam says, Satan istahwada alayhim shaitan. Shaitan has taken them over. They have been caused to forget the remembrance of Allah. Ansahum dhikrullah. But do you know what Imam Zain al-Abidin asks Hussein? Sa'ala Ali ibn Hussein abuhu. What does the Imam say? Aina Abbas salamullahi alayhi. Where is Abbas? Everybody wants to know where is Abbas. Imam Zain al-Abidin asks Imam al-Hussein, Aina al-Abbas? Where is my uncle Abbas? Zainab turns to Imam al-Hussein, to her brother, and says, كيف نخبره? How do we tell him about Abbas? Imam turns to his son and he says, your uncle Abbas has been killed. His arms have been cut off at the Furat. Ali ibn Hussein turns to his father and he says, are you going to be killed and I shall watch? If only I could die instead of you, oh my father. Imam then turns to Ali Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam and he says, you are the Khalifa ba'di. You are the Khalifa of Allah after me. You are the leader of the Shia. You are the Qa'im of this religion. He then hugged his son and he began to cry. Now the Imam goes to Sayyidah Sukaina. Sayyidah Sukaina comes to her father and she pulls her maqna' over her face. This is probably one of the last times for a very long time that her face will ever be covered, brothers. She pulls the maqna' over her face. She looks into the eyes of her father. She says, Ya Abati, Ya Abba, istaslamta lil maut. My father, have you surrendered yourself to maut and to death? قال الحسين عليه السلام يا نور عيني كيف لا يستسلم من لا ناصر له ولا معين. How can I not submit to death when this person has no helper and no assistant? This was the situation of Imam al-Hussein. He tells her, oh my daughter, Allah's rahmah will never be away from you. Allah's divine support will never leave you. Fasbir. Have patience in this world. هذه الدنيا فانية والآخرة الباقية, and the akhirah is forever. He now gave farewell. Imam now rides out into the battlefield. فَوَقَفَ صَلَوَاتُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ قِبَالَةُ الْقَوْمِ. The Imam now stands in front of the army of Umar ibn Sa'd. وَسَيْفُهُ مُصَلَّتْ فِي يَدِهِ, as is narrated by Abdullah Shubbar and others, and from Al-Mufid. آيَةً مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ عَازِمًا عَلَى الْمَوْتِ وَهُوَ يَقُولُ. The Imam is tired of life. He's ready for death. And he begins to recite a poem. أنا ابن علي الطهر من آل هاشم كفاني بهذا مفقرا إذا هنا أفخر. That I am the son of Ali, the purified from Al Hashim. Sufficient for me is this as a virtue when I boast. وجدي رسول الله أكرم من مضى ونحن سراج الله في الخلق نزحر. That my grandfather is Rasulullah. We are the light of Allah. Imagine, this is the poetry of Imam al-Hussein before his death. Fatima ummi min salalati Ahmad, min sulalati Ahmad. Fatima is my mother from the progeny of Ahmad. Wa ammi yudda'a dhil janahin Ja'faru. And my uncle is Ja'far, the one with two wings. The book of Allah was revealed about us. Nahnu amanullah linnas kulluhum. We are protection to all of the people. And then he ends by saying, وَشِيعَتُنَا فِي النَّاسِ أَكْرَمُ شِيعًا. And our Shia are the best of Shia among the people. وَمُبْغِضُنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يَخْسِرُوا. And those who hate us are the losers on the day of judgment. He now says, all the Alas Abi Sufyan, Shi'at ala Abi Sufyan, if you have no religion, وَكُنْتُمْ لَا تَخَافُونَ الْمَعَادِ فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. If you don't fear the day of judgment, then at least be free in this dunya. What crime have my women committed? What crime have my children committed? But they refuse to listen to Imam al-Hussein. Shumar now begins to insult Imam al-Hussein. He insists that the soldiers begin to loot the women. In fact, the looting of the women already began to occur because Imam al-Hussein was far away from the tent and he was blocked off. Atash al-Hussein, hatta ishtadda alayya al-atash. Hussein is now intense in his thirst. His thirst is so much, he's fighting like a roaring lion. Abu Abdullah now gallops towards the Furat. Imam was exhausted. He made multiple attempts to reach the Furat. The Imam manages to reach the Furat. His horse was thirsty and needed some water. But now it becomes apparent that the tents have been broken. Imam is now trapped. He gallops on his horse to return to his banat and his daughters and his nisa. وَحَالُوا بَيْنُهُ وَبَيْنَ الْمَاءِ. They now surround him and block him from the water. Hussein now looks towards the heavens. He says, to die with my sword is the most honorable death, Afdalu. The Imam is fighting so hard. We're told he killed 1,950 soldiers. Oh Allah, count every one of them. Oh Allah, kill every one of them. Do not leave any one of them in the earth. Imam again pleads with them. Are there any free men among you? Is there anyone that will respect my women? Is there anyone that will respect my children? He's screaming at them. Shimur tells them, what are you saying, Ibn Fatima? Laka hada. Even at this moment, Hussein tells Umar ibn Saad, allow me to return to Medina. This is upon you. Umar ibn Saad says, this is your problem, not my problem, Hussein. Hussein says, Allahumma ahsim adada, waqtulhum badada, wa la tadhar ala al-ard minhum ahada. Oh Allah, don't leave any one of them. Umar ibn Saad now turns to his men. He says, what are you waiting? Attack Hussein from every side. Attack him from all fronts. They now begin to fire lances and arrows, swords and spears, then with rocks and fire. Ya Zahra, هذا ابنك الحسين, هذا ولدك الحسين. He is fighting like a lion. Umar ibn Saad ordered an all-out attack on Hussein. وَرَشَكُوهُ بِسِهَامٍ وَالنِّبَالٍ. And they begin covering his body with arrows. They begin covering his body with spears. 4,000 soldiers begin to fire on Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. The arrows are landing everywhere. Hussein is in a state of desperation. His armor can only withstand so many arrows. He begins to break the arrows one by one from his body. He begins to pull them out of his chest. He begins to pull them out of his body. But the arrows are coming min kulli nahiya. From every direction the arrows are coming at Hussein. He says, Al-Maut khayrun min rukub al-ar, wal-ar khayrun min dukhul al-nar. Death is better than being humiliated. Humiliation is better than going to hell. He says, I am Hussein ibn Ali. I will forever protect my family. وَأَنَا عَلَى دِينِ النَّبِي. I'm on the religion of the Prophet. Tabari relates from Umar ibn Saad that Wallahi, مَا رَأَيْتُ رَجُلًا مَكْثُورًا, that we did not see a man that was breaking from the pressures. Rather, he is most composed and fearless. This struck fear in the hearts. Umar ibn Saad says, we have never seen a man like this. We have never seen a man like this. Hussein was a lion. What could the enemies do now? Hussein was yelling, La hawla wa la quwwatu illa billah al-aliyyul azim. Hamid bin Muslim says, Kana lahiyatu mudamikhan bidamihi, that his beard was covered in blood. One of them told him, where are you going with this fight, Hussein? Qutila awladik wa mawalik. Hussein, give up now. Why are you continuing to fight? Imam turns to them and says, have you come to fight me or have I come to fight you? Wallah, on that day they thought, كَأَنَّكَ الْعَلِيَّ الْمُخْتَارِ. They thought that you were Ali al-Mukhtar, Ma'al Dhul-Fiqar. They thought that you were Amir al-Mu'mineen. They could not tell if this was Amir al-Mu'mineen or Hussein ibn Ali. But now they fired an arrow. The arrow lands fi Nahr al-Hussein. The arrow lands in the neck of Hussein ibn Ali. The Imam darts again towards the Furat. He gets attacked completely. Ibn Shahr al-Shub narrates that the Imam had 72 wounds, jiraha. Imam Bakr describes the scene that I cannot even say, Wa Husayna. فواخف إذا تآه هجرون فوقع على جبهته. The Imam stops and they throw a rock onto his forehead. أخذ الثوب ليمس الدم عن جبهته. The Imam tries to take his clothes to wipe the blood from his face. The Imam is now stopped. Abul Hunuf al-Ju'fi then fires an arrow. But brothers, do I narrate? Where does the arrow land? في جبهة الحسين. The arrow lands in the forehead of Imam al-Hussein. The blood is dripping from the face of Hussein. فتاه سهم مسموم له ثلاث شعب فوقع على قلبه. They then fire a three-pronged poison arrow. The arrow lands in the heart of Imam al-Hussein. The Imam raises his head to the heaven. He says, Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah. ثم رفع رأسه إلى السماء. The Imam is just speaking to Allah. The riwayah says that the blood كانوا ميزات فضعف عن القتال, that the blood is squirting from every wound. It is pouring out from every wound. Assalamu ala dima'i sa'ilat. That the blood is everywhere. The Imam is trying to bandage his body. No one could bring this to a conclusion. They are staring at the Imam. The Imam survived these blows. هذا فاطمة هذا من هذا? This is the son of Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. He could not die so easily. They could not execute him so easily. Brothers, give your ta'ziyah to Fatima Zahra. يا زهراء هذا ابنك الحسين سريعا عطشانا. يا زهراء, this is your son. He is thirsty. سريعا على الثرى وجهه على التراب. His face is on the dirt. يا زهراء. Hussein is completely ambushed. لما أثقل الحسين بالجراح بقي كالقنفذ. The riwayah says Hussein looked like a porcupine. Perhaps even his body was elevated because of the arrows in his body. هو يقول بسم الله وبالله وعلى ملة رسول الله. Zainab turns to Umar ibn Saad. She says, Ya Umar ibn Saad, are you going to watch as my brother is killed? انتقم لعليت انتقبت السماء على الأرض. This is the scream and the nida of Zainab. If only the skies would fall onto the earth. وشتم al-Hussein. They began swearing. Malik bin Yusar began swearing at Hussein. Some riwayat say they began kicking the face of Hussein on the ground. فضربوا على الرأسي الشريف. They began hitting the head of Hussein. فقطع البرنس ووصل السيف إلى رأسه. They break his helmet open. The sword arrives into the ras of Hussein. Abdullah bin Hassan runs out onto the battlefield. He says, Wallahi la ufariku ammi. Zainab tries to grab Abdullah, but his hand comes out. And they slice the hand of Abdullah off. He jumps into the lap of Hussein. Harmala fires an arrow into the neck of Abdullah bin Hassan. What can the Imam do? They would turn away and not kill Hussein. The riwayah says, Baki al-Hussein thalathat sa'at min al-nahar. Hussein lay there for 3 hours. رامكا بطرفه إلى السماء. With his eyes towards the sama, saying, Ya ilahi sabran ala qada'ik. لا معبود سواك يا غياث المستغيثين. بسم الله وبالله وعلى ملة رسول الله. Zainab now begins to scream, وسيدا وأهل بيتا. وحملوا عليه من كل جانب. Close your eyes, brother. هذا آخر لحظات الحسين. They surround him from every side. حمل القوم عليه يمين شمالا. From right and left they begin charging the body of Hussein. One of them hit his soldiers, and all you could hear was Surakul Atfal. The Imam's chest was stabbed. ثم رماه سنان بسهم. فخضب بهما رأسه ولحيته. The blood is dripping everywhere. He says, Al-Qallah mukhaddiban bidami. It was heard from a man, O Hussein, you are going to heaven. No. They said, Hussein, taste the fire of hell. They told him. Shuf. They told Hussein, you are going to die thirsty today. ثم رشح للموت جبينك يا أبا عبد الله. Then the sweat of maut began to drip down your face. يدير طرفا خفيا إلى رحلك وبيتك. You're looking right and left towards your family, قال صاحب الزمان. And now the horse has no rider. The horse returns to the women. The women begin to hit their faces. Wow, Husseina! Wow, Abdullah! Shimr and Sinan now approach Hussein. Some riwayat say kharajat Zainab min al-fustat sari'a. Zainab comes out. Shimr comes out. وأهل بيته وشمر جالسا على صدري. يا صاحب الزمان هل أنا أستطيع أن أقرأ بعد المقطع؟ وأبا عبد الله ويا أبا صالح. Imam al-Hussein turns to Shimr and he says, you are the kalb and the dirty dog I saw in my dream. Shimr turns to him and says, how dare you compare me to a dog? And he begins to hit Imam al-Hussein with the end of his sword. Ya Zahra, qabidun ala shaybati. Shimr now grabs the shayba of the Imam, the beard of the Imam. ثم احتاز راسه الشريف وحسين وإماما وإماما